friend once confessed to me that they really weren't doing well, and they really felt like they needed to start going to therapy even more than they had been. And when they told me that, it really surprised me, not because I didn't think they should go, but because nothing had really seemed wrong with them. You know, they were successful, reliable. Honestly, they seemed happy. The way they described it was this: yes, on paper, everything's great, but everything I achieve, everything that I get done, it's like I just don't feel any of it. I just exist. So my friend is a perfect example of someone that struggles with high-functioning depression. Everything on the outside says you're fine, but inside something's off, something's missing. So today we're going to give you 6 signs of high-functioning depression and why they're so easy to overlook. The first sign we're going to discuss is that you never feel fully awake. So you're technically up, you're technically functioning, but all day, it's like there's this fog between you and the world. You might be getting 7, 8, even 9 hours of sleep, and still you wake up feeling like you've barely recharged. This isn't just sleepiness, it's a kind of emotional sedation. It's a flatness that blurs your thoughts, slows your reactions, and can make simple tasks even feel like you're moving underwater. There's a very sound clinical explanation for this. Depression impacts multiple systems in the brain, including the ones that regulate alertness and motivation. When your dopamine and norepinephrine levels are out of balance, your ability to feel energized, engaged, or responsive takes a hit. So even if your body is awake, your mind still feels stuck. This often shows up in real life as a form of dissociation. So you're sitting in a meeting or class or even having a conversation with someone, and you realize you haven't really absorbed anything that's happened in the last 10 minutes. Not because you're distracted, but because everything feels far away, maybe even like you're watching life through glass. Sometimes people call this experience brain fog, but when it's chronic and paired with that low-grade hopelessness, it's often more than fog. It's a real warning sign. Let's move on to the next sign, which is that you're achieving things, but they don't feel like wins. You might check off the tasks, you might hit the deadlines, you even exceed expectations, but the satisfaction doesn't land. There's no pride, no sense of progress, just the internal monologue going, okay, what's next? This is really one of the most deceptive parts of high-functioning depression, because externally you're doing great, but internally it's like you're running on autopilot. The joy, the meaning, the emotional reward, it just doesn't register. Maybe you finally submit that paper, you land that job interview, or you finish a big project. You're getting congratulations, validation, and you smile. You say, thank you so much. But inside, it feels like nothing happened. The reason this happens is depression softens the brain's reward circuitry, especially the release and reception of dopamine. So even when you're doing things that would normally make you feel accomplished, your brain doesn't fully process the emotional payoff. It's not that you don't care, it's that your brain literally can't generate the same response. So I want to take a moment to address some potential questions or confusions about this topic because it can be a bit hard to understand. Why are some people able to perform at a high level while experiencing depression? Does that make it less intense if it's not technically obstructing all aspects of someone's life? Is this a different form of depression altogether? The core idea is this. Some people develop adaptive coping strategies. So perfectionism, people-pleasing, hyperproductivity, these often give people enough structure, control, and validation to be able to contain their thoughts and feelings or just distract from them entirely. These strategies could have been personally developed as a perceived means of survival, or they may be behaviors created by early life expectations. That could be a traumatic environment that demanded action for survival, or one that rewarded performance over emotional honesty. The big thing to recognize is that no, it's not a milder form of depression. No, it's not less real because it's more hidden. It's just better disguised, often by the very traits that people praise you for. And that can make it much harder to name and much harder to treat. The next sign is that you're socially present, but emotionally gone. This is another tough one because it can be completely invisible to your closest people. You still go to work, you still answer messages, you hang out with friends, and you maintain a solid social life, but you're not really there. You're showing up physically, but you're checked out emotionally. And like I said, often no one notices because you're still cracking jokes, you're still asking people how they are, because you've gotten so good at hiding the fact that your internal world is shrinking. Why? Depression often drives emotional withdrawal, but in high-functioning people, it tends to show up in subtle ways, pulling away without fully disappearing. Real intimacy feels too exposing, too effortful. So you protect yourself by keeping things light, surface level, and safe. The next sign is that you talk to yourself in ways that you never talk to someone else. Your inner voice is relentless. You mess up and suddenly you're tearing yourself apart. I'm such an idiot. Why do I always do this? Of course I screwed it up. I always do. And what's worse, you've convinced yourself that this voice is helpful, that this is what keeps you driven or on track. But here's what's actually happening. Depression warps your internal dialogue through something called negative cognitive bias. Your brain becomes highly attuned to mistakes and flaws while filtering out evidence of progress or value. And if you've internalized perfectionism, often from early life experiences where performance was tied to worth, that critical voice can become your default operating system. You might spend hours ruminating over one awkward moment from a conversation, convinced the other person thinks less of you, even though they haven't given you any sign of it. But you can't let it go because on some level you've decided it means something about who you are. But that voice in your head isn't the truth. It's just a pattern, and patterns can be unlearned. For the next sign, you don't feel excitement anymore, just pressure to keep up. So you used to look forward to things, even little stuff, things like movie nights, weekend plans, your favorite coffee spot. But now, everything feels muted, dull, obligatory, like you're just keeping pace with life, not participating in it. This is anhedonia, one of the clearest and quietest signs of depression. It literally means a loss of pleasure or interest. And it happens because the parts of your brain that respond to rewarding stimuli are underactive. So things that used to spark joy just don't anymore. And so then it can kind of start to snowball. You keep doing all the right things, showing up, smiling, saying yes, but the emotional return never comes. And that disconnect starts to wear you down. And eventually it's not just that you feel numb, it's that the numbness makes you question whether you are the problem. Like maybe you're broken for not enjoying what everyone else seems to love. The last sign, and this is a big one, is that you keep telling yourself it's not bad enough. You don't think you need help, or at least not yet. You might tell yourself, I'm still showing up, I'm not falling apart, other people have it worse. This is one of the most insidious parts of high-functioning depression, the belief that your pain has to hit some invisible threshold before it's valid. But here's the truth. If your baseline is low-grade misery, that's not nothing. And it doesn't have to get worse for you to deserve support. Clinically, this kind of minimization is common to people who've learned to cope by pushing through, often at the expense of their own emotional reality. It's a self-protection strategy that says, if I don't name it, I don't have to deal with it. But eventually it does catch up. What if you find yourself Googling symptoms at 1 a.m., right? Watching therapy content on social media, wondering if you're okay. But the next morning you brush it off like, just a weird night. Listen to your instincts. You don't have to collapse just to justify care. Being unwell quietly is still being unwell. High-functioning depression doesn't scream. It doesn't always break things. Sometimes it looks like success, but feels like nothing. If anything in this video resonated with you, that doesn't mean that you're broken. It means you're carrying something heavy and you've gotten really good at hiding it. But here's the good news. You don't have to keep doing that. There is support out there, and no, you don't need to hit rock bottom to deserve any of it. So you can start by checking out some more resources that we have on our website. And if you're ready to take that next step, please click the first link in the description to schedule a chat with us. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope to see you soon.